Vegas, Toyota Tacoma mod regrets, CV axle boot tear, and more. Well, good afternoon everybody, and welcome back to RobMotive. And that's right, there are 5 mod regrets that I have. 5 things that I've done out of the probably 100 or more. That's about 5%, I guess. Yeah, not horrible, but still, things that I would not have done had I had it to do over, or maybe a little bit of foresight. Let's jump right into it. Number 1, I went with 20-inch wheels and tires on my first Toyota Tacoma. Now, I love the look. Problem is, that means the tread wall is too narrow, needs to be bigger. As a result, I had a horrible ride. Didn't help that I had a firmer tire on there to boot. They were Nitto Ridge Grapplers, and I think the compound on those tires, just a little bit too firm, at least for just daily driving or road use. But that thin tread wall, thin relatively speaking, didn't help either. 20 inch is definitely too much. I really think 17, even 16 is probably the best to go, particularly if you're going to use the truck off-road. You want as much tread wall as you can get to absorb all the bumps and stuff that you're going to encounter even on the road. Next up, number 2, a 3.5-inch lift. You know, on the Voodoo Blue Tacoma I ended up going with more of a suspension type lift, if you will, adjustable Bilsteins in the front, in the back, and it ended up that I had about 3.5 inches of lift in the front, all said and done. It actually gave me a little bit of a uptick, if you will, on the front end. I didn't dig the look, that's one, but that's really not the biggest problem. You see, when I did that, I changed the angle of the CV axles, and in doing so, I put more stress on the boots. And I discovered that I actually had torn the boot on the passenger side. That thing leaked all the grease and stuff out from underneath, all over the place, and I had a problem. And I really do attribute it to the angle. I would highly recommend, if you're gonna lift your Tacoma, unless you do something to compensate for that, don't go any higher than about 2.5, 2 3/4 inches, something like that, because that's, in my experience, the most that you can go in changing that CV axle angle before having problems with the boot, potentially tearing the boot like I did. I would never do it that way again unless I was going to do something to take up that extra space, or rather level it out, so that I didn't have that kind of a problem. Number 3, a much more simple mod, the train horn. You know, I had a company, they actually sent me a train horn, so I thought, what the heck, I'll put it in. It really was more like a semi-horn, I guess. But I installed it in the front of the truck, and I gotta be honest, it was really quite a bit of work to put it in. Figuring out where it would fit, wiring it up, securing the little air chamber compressor thing, all that. But I did it, and it sounded great. It was pretty cool, a little novelty thing, if you will. But when I took it out before I traded the truck off, I had noticed it started to rust heavily. Now, I don't know if that's due to where I live. You know, we're relatively close to the Gulf, so you do probably get some salt air. I don't know, maybe just rain, hard to say. But it started to rust, and really pretty badly. But even worse, the little tubes that went on, you know, for the air, actually had popped off. I discovered when I went to take it out that one of them was just laying in there, which of course would have rendered the horn useless to begin with. So not a very good design. Maybe it was just the cheap design of the particular one that I had. Again, it was free, wasn't very costly anyway, but for the amount of work that I did, I would say it was a big waste, and I would never go, at least with probably that one again, and probably not one at all. It's just too much work for the benefit of being able to honk it every once in a while. Number 4, the double hood struts. You know, I went with the double hood struts on my, I think it was first and second recent Toyota Tacoma. These are the ones that you put on, you have to drill a hole in there, for one set anyway, and they make raising your hood easier. They're hood struts. They just take all the weight off when you push it up. They worked awesome. Nothing wrong with the product whatsoever. The problem was they limited the cold air intake that I could put in. Now, if you're staying with a stock cold air intake and you're never going to put anything else in, not a big deal, but they got in the way. I could not change the cold air intake, for instance, to an S&B, which is what I wanted, a bigger cold air intake, because they wouldn't allow the hood strut enough clearance to be able to shut. I did have a choice. I could have taken the one off the left side, the passenger side, you know, where the cold air intake is, but I'd have either had to leave the brackets on there or had holes in my hood and down below because they were the drill type. Now, they do have, or there are available, some bolt-on type. Those work good. You don't have to drill anything, but it's the same problem. You don't have the clearance. So I would highly recommend, even if you're not considering a cold air intake now, that you go with the single hood strut type. That way it's put on the driver's side, there's nothing in the way of it, it doesn't limit your ability to do anything under the hood. You can change the cold air intake down the road if you want to, and you don't have to waste money buying multiple sets like I did. This is actually my third one because I do have the single hood strut now. I will caution you though, the hood is a little bit skewed because obviously it's only lifted by the one side, so it does sit just a little bit off when it's up. If that bothers you, then probably not the way you'd want to go. However, doesn't seem to make any difference to me. The hood is not bending or anything crazy like that. I suppose if you open the hood constantly all throughout the day, every day, over a period of time, it could start to warp one way or maybe bend one way, but I don't see any issue with just the single hood strut for normal use. Now, number 5. The WeatherTech window vent visors. You know, I put these on because they're a no glue option. I like that because you didn't have any adhesive, if you will. Problem is, they kind of bow out the trim a little bit. It's bowed out a little here and it's bowed out a little bit on the other side. I still haven't changed them, although the plan is to do that, and I'm going to go back to the AVS style that I had before. Those are in channel as well, but they're held in by adhesive. They kind of stick to the molding on the inside window area, if you will. They just seem to be much better. No contact with the window after they got seated. You do have to leave them sit for probably, I would say, at least a couple of days so that the adhesive takes hold. But after that, I had no issues with them. They fit well, and there was no bowing of that trim piece. I would highly recommend going with those, although I will caution you. They are cheaper, which is a good thing, but I've heard a lot of reports of them arriving damaged, scratched, broken, whatever. So throw that in with a grain of salt. You can always return them. I've never heard of anybody having problems with the company as far as getting replacements, but just know that it seems, I didn't have this experience, but a lot of people have, that you might get a set that you need to return. But once you do get them, the good ones, they're the best ones that you can get, in my opinion, because they just seem to fit the best and you don't have that trim bowing problem. Anyway, those are just 5 of the biggest Toyota Tacoma mod regrets that I have. The biggest one, or the biggest problem, being that torn CV axle boot. A little more serious there, anywhere from a $600 to $1,600 repair, depending on where you go and who does it. Leave a comment. Let me know if you've ever had any issues with any of these. I'd be curious to know, or if there's something else that I may have missed. Also, real quick, I do have 2 additional channels. RobMotive MT, all about mini trucks. Currently, the Hyundai Santa Cruz, and RobMotive JT, all about Jeep Gladiators. Check them out, and if you're interested, why not subscribe? Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there. Bye.